This episode is brought to you by my Fertility Awareness Mastery online self-study program. Learn fertility awareness from the comfort of your own home at your own pace for a fraction of the cost. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/mastery for details. That's fertilityfriday.com/mastery. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 363. Welcome to the Fertility Friday podcast, your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. I'm your host, Lisa Hendrickson-Jack. I'm the author of The Fifth Vital Sign and the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Journal. I'm a certified fertility awareness educator and holistic reproductive health practitioner with nearly 20 years of experience teaching women to connect to their fifth vital sign through menstrual cycle charting, balancing hormonal health, and optimizing the menstrual cycle without hormones. I'm outspoken about hormonal birth control and its impact on fertility and overall health because you have the right to know how your body works and how artificial hormones disrupt that natural process. I host live coaching programs to help you achieve optimal fertility and health because it's important to have healthy menstrual cycles regardless of whether or not you want to have babies. I'm also a wife and mother of two beautiful boys. I know, I'm a busy girl, but I managed to fit it all in. This podcast is designed to empower you to take full control of your cycles, your fertility, and your overall health. And I'm so excited that you're here with us today. In today's episode, I share my recent interview with Dr. Mariza, and we are talking all about menopause and premenopause, that 10-year period leading up to our very last period, and some of the things that we can do to be our best and be most vibrant during that time. And this topic seems to be really, really popular right now. There's a couple great books that have been released, including Dr. Mariza's, about this topic. And certainly it's something that I've been speaking about with clients over the years, because I think that it's time that as women, we change the conversation around this period of time instead of expecting it to be this horrific, hormonal imbalanced, devastating period of time that we kind of expect to be horrible, to really deconstruct it and find out what's going on. So I'm really thrilled to be part of these conversations and to really just shed some light on this period of time, shed some of those myths about what to expect, and to really give us a chance to talk about what this period of time means for us. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode with Dr. Mariza. I'm excited to be here once again with Dr. Mariza. Congratulations on the release of your new book. Your bio says that you've written 7 books. By the time this comes out, you will have a wonderful baby. When do you sleep?
And this is actually book baby number 8.
That's what I was thinking, because the bio says like 7 books and then upcoming book. And so the upcoming brand new book is the Essential Oils Menopause Solution. So really, really excited to dig into that. But yeah, when do you sleep? And tell us a little bit about your new book and what inspired you to write it and to focus specifically on menopause as well.
That's such a great question. So I don't sleep right now with our little 3-month-old baby boy. But it gives me a lot of time to think about this book, baby. I'll tell you what. And that's the thing is, what, I'm always in such awe of women and our resilience and our capacity. Women never, ever cease to amaze me. Where I got the inspiration from this book was when I was on my book tour in 2019 for my 7th book, the Essential Oils Hormone Solution. I had the opportunity to meet thousands of women, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences, like to get to meet people in person and to get to hear their concerns, their pain points, what they're going through, and what they're really hoping to get. I remember from that book. And when I looked around the crowd, I saw a lot of women were in their 40s and their 50s, really trying to navigate the terrain of perimenopause and menopause and not really feeling that they had been given the right tool sets, that they had been misinformed, that their doctors had just wrote them off as, you're just getting older, or there's nothing we can do about it, or you're simply going to have to live with this. And I have a feeling, every single woman listening to this, either they themselves have been there or they know somebody who has in their life that they maybe had to advocate for at the doctor's office. And so as these women are coming up to me, they're holding my book and they're so excited about it. But they said, I can't tell you how many times I heard this is there anything in this book for me? Is there anything in this book for me? Because it didn't say the menopause solution. It didn't say the perimenopause solution. It wasn't clear if what was in that book was really going to pertain to them. And I felt like so many women have felt like, they weren't being served. And I remember walking away from that. It was like, I think I was on a book tour for 3 weeks or so. And I remember getting a lot of pressure from Penguin Random House to like, what's the next book? What's the next book? What's the next book? And I'm like, can I just be in this book for a hot minute? It took me 2 years to write this book. Can I just live in it? But I remember walking home one of those nights and it was like a light bulb went off. And I wrote up the proposal for this book and I knew that this next book I needed to write was for women, basically 45 and older, 45, 50, 60. And that's the thing about menopause is once you're there, you're just there. You've arrived in that next new beautiful phase in your life. And I think about women, and I talked about how in awe I am, but where I really find we have the female change agents in the world, girl, is after 50. Like you think about the wisdom that happens for women after 50, like the big initiatives, the policies, the fund, big fundraisers, all the things that women are moving mountains for, changing the world for usually, and not to say that we can't be doing that in our 30s and our 40s, absolutely can. But there's a wisdom that we accumulate over time. And it really, I feel like it shows up in a different kind of energy when we're in our 50s and beyond. And we need more reverence around that. And that's why this transition, I think, can be so sacred, especially when we own it and we make it our own. And then we charge forward, live in our passion and live in our mission.
Well, I love this topic so much. So I'm not quite at the stage yet, but I really think it's just critically important to start talking about menopause and shedding some light on menopause. So for the listeners who listened to recent podcasts that I released about 6 months ago with Alexandra Pope, and we dived into menopause. And what I was saying to you, Mariza, was that it's probably one of the first conversations that many of the listeners had heard about menopause. It's actually positive, talking about it as this incredible point of change in their lives that represents a shift that is positive. And I like to think of it as this energetic shift from when your body is literally creating life and you are literally there to create life for others and to give your energy to others in a very
every
literal sense.
Your body's just like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? Like every month, you know how much energy that takes?
And then when you go through that transition, that switches off and then you get to keep that energy for yourself.
That's what I'm talking about.
So I'd love for you to just talk to our listeners about, what is menopause? Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of us think of menopause, air quotes, as the 10 years leading up to menopause, like the premenopause or the perimenopause. So I'd love for you to kind of shed some light on that and maybe share what your thoughts are of it, given that our culture is often so negative when it comes to menopause.
Absolutely. Well, and there's a lot of history around why we have such a negative association. And unfortunately, it has a lot to do with our medical system, our culture, particularly here in the US, how we think about, there, in some parts of the world, in some countries, and definitely in some cultures, there's not even a word. Menopause isn't a word. There's a transition and menopause basically is that defined point where you go an entire year without a menstrual cycle and bam, that is menopause. And really, if we were to just move everything aside and just get into the nitty gritty, basically what menopause is you don't have to buy tampons anymore. You don't have to buy pads anymore. You're not having a period anymore. And that's that reclaiming of that energy that we used every single month for all of those childbearing years. That's really kind of that's defining moment of menopause. And then we're basically in menopause for the rest of the duration of our life, however long and beautiful that life is going to be. But yes, there is a transitional time where we kind of, our bodies are gearing up. As you can imagine, women, our reproductive system, our monthly cycle, which you are like the queen of really owning and understanding. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to our reproductive health and our menstrual cycle. And so to wind that down takes a little bit of time, understandably so. It's one of the most energetic processes in the body. And then it's only for us as women, right? That there's so much that goes on. You think about even like mitochondria inside of our ovaries. There's like on average, there's 1,000 to 3,000 mitochondria in every cell in the body. But when it comes to our ovaries, it's like over 10,000. Like that's how much energy is required to get ready to create human life. And then it's a whole different ballgame when you're pregnant and creating human life. And I can finally speak into that because I've been down that road. And so I know what that feels like too. It's a whole nother ballgame. But as we start to shift and we're starting to see a little bit earlier on symptoms of perimenopause, symptoms that can be associated with perimenopause. I don't want the association of perimenopause to be like, oh gosh, this scary, erratic roller coaster. But unfortunately, it can be for some people. But usually we start to see shifts and changes in our menstrual cycle, kind of in our reproductive health around our mid to late 30s. And every woman's very different. It really depends on a lot of factors leading up to that moment as well. And so perimenopause can be, give or take 10 plus years leading into menopause. And that perimenopause, we can break that up into 2 to 3 different seasons throughout perimenopause as we get to that defining 1-year mark where we don't have a cycle anymore.
Well, and a lot of the women who are listening to this episode right now are charting their cycles or thinking about charting their cycles or paying attention. And I think one of the biggest fears, I guess I could call it that, for women who are charting is when they start to see changes in their cycles and reflecting changes in their hormones. And I think because there's this idea that it just all kind of ends or it just all kind of goes into this really messy, horrific, like the concepts that we have about this normal transition of life are all negative. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of women might mistake to some degree what we would consider a normal phase and transition for a problem. So I think this might be a good part to kind of get into what is normal as we go into this 10 years before menopause, versus, and how do we know when there's a problem? And if you want to jump in and share also, because of course your book is about essential oils largely and how we can use those. So I'm not sure if you want to kind of tie those in together, but I think a lot of us want to know, like, what is normal? How do I know that this is, at what point is this problematic?
It's a great question. And and here's the thing we know to be true is that every woman is unique. So every woman's going to have a different experience. And I guess the ideal normal, the optimal normal is that we saunter through this with ease and grace. Like we don't oops, we're in menopause. How did that happen? Like that would be the most ideal normal. But the thing of it is that whether we know it or not, we are living in this world and we are women are the ultimate caretakers. We're very selfless in how we show up in the world. And that always plays a role. And so we think about some of the kind of just the landscape in which we're operating. How are we taking care of our bodies and nourishing our bodies in our 20s, even in our teens, in our 30s, because that's really going to define what happens in our 40s and our 50s. What we do know is normal is that our hormones are going to begin to shift. That we know for sure is going to be a normal process. In the beginning, as early as our late 30s, I know you see this a lot as much as I do, we start to see a dip in progesterone. Now, progesterone is it is the hormone that goes up in the second part of our cycle right after ovulation. The corpus luteum releases progesterone and it begins to rise. Usually it's kind of at its peak, depending on let's say you have a 30-day cycle. Let's say it's peaking around day 19, day 20. And then it slowly begins to go down as we get ready for actually experiencing a period. So at the end of our luteal phase, at the start of the follicular phase, we get our cycle, we get our period. and progesterone is lower. Now, what happens is because that is the hormone that not only sustains pregnancy, but helps us to get pregnant, it's actually the first hormone that begins to slowly, gradually dip over time. So we'll have a situation where women are beginning to see a decline in progesterone levels. They may see maybe all of a sudden their 30-day period is now a 29-day period, or a 28-day period, or a 27-day period. Like it begins to shorten just a little bit in those first, let's say from like 38 to like 42 or something like that. And then what begins to happen is if we have compounded inflammation, if we've got toxins that we've been exposed to, if we are running around just with endless checklists and we've got lots of responsibilities and we're handling all the business and we're taking care of all the peoples, all those types of stressors are going to play a bit of a role in what's going on with our cycle as well. And so if we have some of those other stressors involved, which for a lot of us, there's a lot of different ways that we can mitigate and address some of those root causes to really create more ease and grace during this transition. But if you've got progesterone levels dipping and you've got inflammation and stressors in the body, you're going to start to feel some of that, a little bit of that upheaval. And one of the things that we know to be true is that although progesterone is dipping in the beginning, especially into our early 40s, late 30s, estrogen isn't. It's not. And so estrogen can become unopposed. So we may see symptoms of heavier periods. We may see symptoms of migraines, of tender, swollen, fibrocystic breasts. We may see a little bit more weight distribution around the hips, maybe around the belly area. Those are going to be, if again, the natural progress of these hormones shifting, one staying up, one gradually going down. Normally we like these two hormones to check each other, check yourself before you wreck yourself kind of situation. And we've got one dropping naturally, gradually, and the other one staying up. We're going to see a little bit of shifting there, especially if we already have some inflammation. So I just wanted to speak into that ideal normal is, we notice a little bit of shifting, a little bit of changes, but it's not erratic. It's not disruptive. But if we do have some of those other stressors that are already in play and we hadn't really managed those, that's when we're going to start to feel a little bit more disruption. That's where we're going to start to feel sleeplessness. That's when we're going to start to feel maybe a couple of night sweats. That's where we're going to begin to feel cravings, brain fog, mood swings. Especially what we'll notice them first is around right before our period starts. So that PMS just starts to elevate a little bit more. But the beautiful thing is there's a lot that we can do about that throughout that transition.
Well, and one of the things about getting older that we love so much is that what I found anyways. So, at the time that when this is released, I will be 38 years old. What I've noticed so far is just that there's a somewhat less resiliency, I guess I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So what I always say is in my 20s, I really could just abuse my body.
You could do anything.
Eat all the sugar, wouldn't really put on a lot of weight. I mean, that was my body type. I could not sleep. I could stay up late or work a lot and just kind of keep going. I could drink a lot of alcohol if I wanted to, I could party and it wouldn't really affect me that much. But now that I'm older, none of that can happen. I mean, it really wrecks me. So in the sense that there's a couple, if I wanted to pretend I was 20 and go on some fun week long.
Like a binger. Yeah.
I would need 3 weeks
to
recover. So I guess the question out of that is, because the way I look at it, it seems to be that when we get into our 40s and, mid to late 40s or even early 40s, it catches up to us. So if we haven't been paying attention to our health, if we haven't been managing that stress, if, as you mentioned, a lot of us are go-getters and we're out there kind of doing everything, being everything to everybody all the time, it would seem as though that would exacerbate it. So I'm not sure if you wanted to talk a little bit about stress and progesterone and how those things work together and how we can make it a lot worse for ourselves if we're not aware of this.
Yeah. If we could just remove all of that we have done in our 20s and our 30s, right? And it just be about the hormones, we'd probably skate right through. No problem. Hormones are shifting. It's all good. You're going to adapt. Your body's going to adapt. It's a natural process. This was always a natural process. I give a great example. My husband turned 35. We're 6 years apart. So I'm 6 years older than my husband. And he's a man. So the hormone system isn't very complicated in there, like nothing compared to women. And Alex turned 35 and just felt it. Felt the years of his 20s catching up with him, felt probably the mid 30s catching up with him. Like it hit him like a ton of bricks. Remove hormones. And let's just talk about cellular energy, cellular damage, cellular vitality, and talk about mitochondrial support and how sensitive our mitochondria are to all of those years of doing whatever you're doing. Now bring you back into the mix, right? And bring hormone fluctuations back into the mix, all of that. And let's just call that inflammation. That's just what I call it. Let's call that Friday night 2 glasses of wine that you had. That's inflammation on the system. Whether you've got hormones or not, you're going to most likely feel that somewhere. But when you talk about hormones coming into play, it's not like your hormones are exacerbating the problem. It's the 2 glasses of wine that are exacerbating the hormonal connection. I always say your hormones aren't sabotaging you. They're not going against you. They're not working against you. They're being impacted by something else. They're being impacted by a root cause. They're being impacted by stress. They're being impacted by a lack of nutrient deficiencies. Because when you drank those 2 glasses of wine and you worked your butt off on Friday, you probably became nutrient deficient that day. You probably depleted a lot of things that your hormones were like, hey, I needed that. I needed the zinc. Where'd the vitamin D go? What happened to the magnesium? You're like, oh yeah, I used it on accident for this other thing I was doing. And so really what's going on is that your hormones, they're getting sloppy seconds and they're not working as well. And they're shifting at the same time. And so it can really definitely feel like some of these symptoms are more exacerbated. And so it really, what really defines what your 40s and 50s look like is how well you take care of you. So for example, I started to notice when I had a glass of wine or more than a glass of wine in my late 30s, I woke up the next day, I felt foggy. I felt puffy. I just wasn't firing on all cylinders. I wasn't my best self. And I had to grapple with that for a couple of years because I love a great Barbaresco. I love a great glass of champagne. These are things I savor. But then my body was like, no more for you. Nah, that isn't working for us. And so I maybe have a drink. I know no one wants to hear this. I'm 41 years old. I maybe have a drink once a quarter, maybe once a month. Right now I'm breastfeeding, so I'm not drinking at all. That's just my personal preference. But by the time I'm done breastfeeding, I will have not had a drink in almost 2.5 years, just to kind of give some context. And I just feel better that I'm not adding one more burden to the system. I've had a lot of hormone issues in my past and I've had to really listen to my body and check in and say, is this serving me? And if it's not serving me, it's got to go because I know what it feels like to feel really, really good, even during perimenopausal transition. And I know what it feels like to not feel good and to feel like my hormone shifts are being exacerbated. And so I think as we navigate this terrain, we're just going to have to not only become very self-aware, but also have some tough conversations with ourselves and decide what is and what isn't serving us and be willing to pivot. Because as we transition, in a lot of ways, we're playing a bigger game. And so what got you here isn't going to get you to that next level. Isn't going to get you that next level of vitality and health and energy. And so we just need a transition. And let's be honest, should we have done any of that in our 20s to begin with, just because we could? Should we have done it?
That's a tough one because I do think, what did they say? Like youth is wasted on the young. I feel like that's
What if we could waste it in our 50s?
But I don't know. When I look back, I don't have regrets that I had a good time, that I went on trips, that I drank sometimes. Like, I don't really have regrets about that. I think that it's necessary to, as part of the learning process, what you described to me is what I often call body literacy, in the sense that, you drank the wine because you love it, because it's delicious, but then you would also pay attention to your body and take that feedback and notice it. So being aware enough of your body to actually notice what was going on, and then kind of starting to play with it a little bit intentionally. Okay, well, what happens if I da 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 da? Last time I noticed da da da. And that is really being in conversation with your body. And I feel like there's a lot of value in that. And it's, from my observations throughout the years, this is the natural way that it goes. As we get older, as we get more mature, as we gain more wisdom, and as we really, I feel like as you get older, like, this has just been my experience, but I have a less and less tolerance for not feeling good.
Yeah.
If something happens, and like, so the other day I threw out my back, and like, I have no tolerance. It was so extreme. Like, I went to my chiropractor 3 days in a row. I bought a new bed, and I bought a walking desk treadmill, because I'm done with it. I'm like, pain is not happening anymore. So I feel like, I don't know, this is part of just the natural process of learning and gaining wisdom. But what advice do you have for women who aren't necessarily used to tuning into their bodies and used to paying attention to these signs? Like the woman who's like, yeah, I know that the coffee kind of affects me, or I know that the alcohol kind of affects me, but I love my coffee, but I love my wine. Are you telling me that I need to stop drinking the wine? Like, I really like the wine. Like, what?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I mean, and it's you have to, every decision, we have to weigh those. We have to weigh the pluses and the minuses, the pros and cons, and decide what's worth it. I was that woman. There were, like I said, there were definitely a good 3 to 4 years where it was a constant conversation with myself about how much could I get away with this without causing major disruption to my body. And then ultimately, one day saying, you know what, this just isn't serving me the way that at my greatest capacity. And I think it's really about asking ourselves those questions, is one, really tuning in. I'm one of the areas where I've really struggled, and I know a lot of women struggle. And I feel like this really comes up definitely during perimenopause and menopause, and not because of perimenopause and menopause. It's just that I find that women in their 40s or 50s are busier than ever. They're navigating family, they're navigating parents, they're navigating careers, they're navigating finding themselves, kind of figuring out where they fit in the world. So there's just a lot of transition, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. And that all requires energy. And so there was a time where I was addicted to stress. And if I'm not careful, I can kind of slide back into these old behaviors and old patterns. And so, what I think about stress too, is it's so insidious, because stress isn't disruptive on its own. Like, your body doesn't send off a little light, a little indicator light that says, oh, you're stressed. So often it could feel like you've got the slight edge. You got like a little boost of energy, a little something. It's very sneaky. What is disruptive is waking up and being exhausted. What's disruptive is trying to put your pants on and all of a sudden they don't fit. What's disruptive is having a migraine. Those are physical disruptions. But stress doesn't necessarily feel disruptive. It just adds up over time. And so, for me to recognize when I'm going into a more kind of stressful state, I really have to tune into my body. I really have to pay attention to signs. One of the things I'll do is I'll notice I'm speaking faster. I'm going down to one line. Like, I'm answering people with one line, or I'm responding to someone asking me how I'm doing with, oh my God, girl, I am so busy. Like, there's a couple of cues. I'm noticing that I'm more constricted inside versus open. And I'm just a little bit more irritable. And so those are usually signs to me that I've moved into a stressed state. And I know that the implications of that stress state are going to be, maybe my sleep's going to get disrupted. Maybe I'm going to feel less energetic. I'm going to have some mood swings, and I'm not going to be my best self. And so just there's ways in which that we can tune into that self-awareness and just kind of observe what our bodies are telling us. And I think it's probably the most powerful tool, especially in moving into our 40s and 50s that we can leverage, because your body is always telling you something. Your gut is telling you something. Your brain, that fogginess is telling you something. That weird disruptive mental chatter before you go to bed at night is telling you something. I know that it can feel like normality and it can feel like just commonality because all these other women around you are dealing with the same stuff. But how is that affecting your life? How is that disrupting your ability to show up the way that you want to in the world?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about that and painting the picture, I resonate with so much of that. As we get older, we have so many, depending on your situation, your family situation, if you're sandwiched between kids and older parents, the responsibilities that you may have within your family, within your workplace, within your friend circle, all of those things together. It can be a lot. So, and as you were talking about it, there's certain stressors that we can't really just eliminate. Most of us can't just eliminate our jobs or like our kids, right? Like I say that, tongue in cheek.
Or trying to do your job with your kids right next to you. Yes, it gets very complicated.
So all of it isn't necessarily within our control, things that we can eliminate. Of course, we can really work on how we respond and how we show up. But one of the things that we can control to some degree, at least, is our exposure to toxins. Mm-hmm. And, when you think about stressors, you're often thinking about those kind of active stressors, person, place, or thing, I guess, commute that are really stressful, but you don't necessarily think about all the toxins and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of touched on like alcohol, like whether you think it's a toxin or not, your body does. So that's how it handles it.
Your liver doesn't like it.
Not so much. And your liver also doesn't like all of the chemicals in our houses all the time, the scented products, the cleaners, all those types of things. And I feel that your books address this for a lot of women because we want our houses clean. This is clear, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't pollute our bodies. And so I feel for a lot of women, this is why we're so drawn. One of the many reasons, but this is one of the many reasons why we're so drawn to essential oils as a part of like, get me out of the toxic soup, but I still want it to smell good though.
Totally. One of the reasons why I love essential oils and this book encompasses, the first part of this book is really about root cause. What is really driving this? Is it really my hormones or is it something deeper? Is it a gut issue? Is it the stressors, whether it's a chemical stressor or a physical stressor or an emotional stressor, right? That you're operating in rushing women syndrome because you've got to be all the things to everybody, right? What are some of those root causes that could be drivers of why you're experiencing some of these symptoms? But then I offer all the solutions from supplementation to lifestyle to self-care to nutrition. It's got a 21-day program in it, all of it. But essential oils, and what I love about essential oils more than anything, because again, as a former stressaholic, there was a drug of choice that I preferred. It was stress. And then literally topped that stress off with some coffee. And girl, I was in business. I was handling business. And so what I love about oils is that I call them the instant wins. If you are having a meltdown, you can use an oil for an instant win. If you're having brain fog, you can use a peppermint and a citrus for an instant win. If you are feeling that mental chatter, lavender, clary sage, vetiver before going to bed at night with a little bit of some deep breath exercising or like a phone app, sleep meditation. That little combo, that'll knock you out. You're having a hot flash, so a spritzer of peppermint, right? Like there's all these, you can have a quick win. A lot of the other things, changing your diet, mindful practices, meditation, sleep hygiene, supplementation, all of that's a journey. And it's the work we got to do. I'm not going to pretend like you can skirt out of any of that work. It's the work that really is going to transform the body. But there are days where you and I and everyone listening to this, we deserve an instant win. I want the thing and I want it now, right? And I don't want it to come in a candy bar because I know that that's not going to do me any favors. And so that's how I love to talk about essential oils is what if you could just grab an oil and you could choose your mood? What if you could grab an oil and you could shift yourself back into focus and concentration? What if you're having a crap day and there's an oil to just erase that overwhelm? And then when we're talking about the chemicals the personal care chemicals, the cleaning chemicals, being in our home and having an increased amount of toxicity just in the air that we breathe, like how can we sub out those products and those those Glade plugins or those scented candles for something that isn't just going to have the house smell better, but also boost your energy levels or change your mood or help you go to bed at night. So we have diffusers, essential oil diffusers all over the house. And depending on how I want to feel or what I've got to do that day, like I can literally choose a couple of oils that will shift my mental state, that will shift my emotional state, and will also purify the air in the house and boost my immune system at the same time. So we're talking about like knocking out 3 birds with one stone, one little diffuser stone and a couple of oils, or making over my cleaning cabinet. So as a new mama and as a hormone expert, I know everything you can imagine about endocrine disruptors, especially, you've got your beautiful boys. I'm raising this little beautiful boy. I'm really mindful about their neurochemistry and their development. And also I'm mindful about my estrogen dominance. Like I don't want migraines. I don't want angry breasts. I don't want heavy, uncomfortable periods. It's also, I don't want the bigger concerns around estrogen dominance, like fibroids and maybe cancer, the things that can happen when estrogen's unopposed. And if we can sub out some of those products or as many of those products as possible and buy either organic or make them ourselves, we're slowly chipping away at creating less inflammation in the body and really allowing our hormones to function at their peak capacity. Despite them shifting, they're still doing their job.
I wanted to pop in with a quick message from today's sponsor, Audible. Did you know that you can listen to The Fifth Vital Sign for free when you sign up for a 30-day trial with Audible? Head over to fertilityfriday.com/audible for details. That's fertilityfriday.com/audible. Now let's jump back into today's episode. You said so many things there. I was like taking notes, like, ooh, what can I do for this? Ooh, what can I do for that? But maybe, we'll have to grab a copy of your book. And I'll also link our previous episode because I remember you blew my mind the first time I had you on the podcast and you were talking about the science behind how certain essential oils can reduce cortisol, meaning lower stress and all these different.
Honestly, I don't know who I would be today without the oils. I use them every single day. Like I said, it would be a straight up lie if I told you I was releasing a book and I have a 3-month-old and I don't have stress. But I have all these strategies and these techniques and these rituals that keep me in check. Because I believe in a yes and. I believe that I can have it all. I believe that all women can have it all. And I think we can do it with ease and grace and not just feel bombarded and overwhelmed and consumed by all the things that are going on in our life 24/7. And one of the ways that I really leverage those little moments of grace and magic is by just grabbing an essential oil, like a tangerine or a frankincense or a jasmine. And it just shifts everything, because whether we like it or not, those oils have chemistry, and that chemistry goes into the brain, goes into the limbic system, and literally can fine tune it up, calm it down, relax it, when maybe we didn't have the capacity to do so.
Well, so then give us a few quick wins. So for stress in general, I feel like that's something where a lot of us would want to know, like, what about those times when I can cut feel somebody? This basic. I was trying to say it in a nice way, but yeah, someone's getting cut unless
someone's getting cut, right?
And then also PMS, like also when you are approaching your period and you're a little sharp. Like I know sometimes, like it's like I got that sharpener. I'm a little sharper usually that week.
Girls, we call it snippy snappy. You just wish someone would say something. That someone would be my husband.
I wish you would. Yes.
Exactly. Anybody. Somebody.
I dare you to say something about this right now. I do.
You just
Go
have
ahead.
to give a look. So you find yourself in a situation where you're just at your tipping point. You're about to cut somebody or give somebody the business or a dressing down. My go-to oil for that, like just two oils would be clary sage. I call clary sage the Beyonce of hormone essential oils. And so it's a phenomenal calming oil. And then the other one I would choose to go with clary sage would be another floral like lavender or jasmine or rose or ylang-ylang. Any of those are phenomenal. So just grab a couple florals, apply them to your wrist or put a couple in your palm, breathe it in. Take about 15 to 30 seconds to just take some deep breaths, switch tracks from sympathetic fight or flight, wish somebody would, to relax mode. And you've changed your state. You're not the person you were a couple seconds ago. For just everyday management, I think, instead of waiting for that emergency to happen, especially if your cycle, your period's coming, you're at the end of that luteal phase, PMS is oftentimes brewing at that time. I would say have a little alarm, a little chime on your phone on the hour where you grab your little blend that you already have pre-made. I think having it pre-made is always really convenient, super easy to make them in little roller bottles. And I have tons of recipes for this, for anxiousness, for stress, for overwhelm, for mood swings, all of it. Just pick your little combination. I've got it all done for you. And that's really important because sometimes we just need someone to tell us exactly how to do it. And so you just roll that over your palms, over your wrist on the hour, every hour, literally takes 1 minute. Take some deep breaths, get that oxygen back into the brain. And it'll literally reset you on the hour so that stress and overwhelm buildup just never gets to the tipping point. And maybe that's conditioned for you every time you are stepping into those first 4 days before your period. Another thing that I recommend is, besides having them on hand at all times, is having oils that you start with in the morning. So I have a tangerine that I start with every single day. And citrus oils like tangerine and wild orange are known as the oils of abundance, the oils of happiness and joy. And they are effervescent and they just feel like liquid joy in a bottle. So I start every morning with one of those oils. And then at night, to kind of just, a lot of us think that we can just run into bed from our activities. Women check in their email, responding to emails till 1 a.m, and then getting into bed and expecting their brain to shut off. It's a no-go, especially as we get older. And so having a little blend of lavender, cedarwood, vetiver, Roman chamomile. I've got a whole entire sleep chapter and the best oils for sleep. Have a little diffuser running. Say what you're grateful for your day, right? Because no matter what kind of day we have, there's always things to be grateful for. I have a little crystal by my bedside, and I just run down the list of everything I'm thankful for that day, and it shifts my mindset, shifts everything. All of a sudden, there's no to-do list, there's no worry list. It's just gratitude. And then I have a sleep meditation that's 10 minutes long. By the time I'm done with it, I'm pretty much passed out. So just bookending your day, having these oils with you on hand, ones that work for you, is going to be the way to really create those beautiful instant wins and really allow you to create your day by design and not by default.
I'm so glad that you took us through that. I love that, because I think these are the practical things that we all kind of need a little bit of help with from time to time, whether it is getting up in the morning and having that extra boost so that you can feel really awake and alive and alert, and especially calming down at night. So it was like you were reading my mind, because those were going to be my questions. And selfishly, I have a question. So you shared some great specifics of blends and, ideas and things like that we can do for nighttime. And of course, you have it all outlined in your book. Can't wait to read the sleep chapter.
And done for you in the book.
Yes. Well, so then my question is, so my son, he has mentioned on a few occasions, this is literally like a personal question, excuse me, everybody, but he's been saying that he's a little stuffy in the evenings, and it's only in the evenings. And so I've been thinking about getting him a diffuser and having specifics, obviously for bedtime, but also for purifying the air. So I figure this is a great time to ask.
Yeah, it's a perfect time to ask. So if I, and everyone, I know everyone wants a healthy respiratory system right now and all the time, but especially for your little boys and any kids who are like, Mama, something ain't right with my respiratory system, they're stuffy. So diffuser by the bedside, in the room. And I would do a couple drops of eucalyptus. So it just opens up the air. We all think of vapor rub, right? This is like organic vapor rub. A little bit of eucalyptus. A lemon opens up congestion. So lemon is amazing, or lime, lemon or lime opens up congestion. And lemon is a natural immune system booster and purifier. And it smells really delicious with eucalyptus. And then I would do maybe one little drop of spearmint or peppermint, or cardamom. Now, cardamom's a little bit more expensive of an oil, but it's a phenomenal respiratory oil. It's like the king of spices, right? We think of cardamom like this really sexy spice. So, but if I keep it simple, I would do a little eucalyptus, a little lemon, and a little spearmint, and that'll just open things up.
Well,
and you could also do a little bit, like if you dilute it, you can make a little salve with coconut oil and you can put it on his chest. So really
we
easy.
will be. Yes, thank you. And I feel like this really gives a taste of what we'll find in your book, because obviously it's not only about essential oils. There's so much practical information, as you mentioned, diet and all of the different things that we need to do. But I also know that I get so many questions about essential oils. Women are going crazy for it. And I am too. And I think the reason for that, and I think we spoke about this a little bit when I interviewed you last time, but it's this wonderful way to, as you said, make this great shift pretty much on the spot. There's an incredible amount of research behind how this can shift our hormones. It feels good, smells good. You just feel so luxurious, and it's actually like helping.
Yeah. It's all a win. That's what I love about them. Like when you have to make that decision for your brain fog or your little energy booster at 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's that York peppermint patty or it's that peppermint oil, girl, that peppermint oil ain't got no calories in it. And it's definitely not going to jack up your insulin levels, which we didn't even get into today. Don't even get me started on insulin. But that's what I love about it. And there's so many other side benefits. Whereas that York peppermint patty doesn't have a lot of side benefits, or that
the chocolate bar,
yeah,
the boost comes with a pretty significant.
It does.
Price.
It comes with a crash, and so and that's the thing. You can keep on reapplying that oil, keep on giving yourself that little energy booster, and so. That's what I love about the book is I offer what I consider to be the comprehensive solution. I think women deserve the comprehensive solution. But in the process of creating a comprehensive solution, we also deserve, what can we do? Well, Dr. Mariza, what you got for me right now? Like right now. And we deserve that right now little fix too. We get to, like I said, I'm a yes and girl. I'm going to give you the instant win, and I'm going to give you the comprehensive plan. That because while we're getting to the big work and it's taking us a little bit of time, we deserve to feel good in the interim. I think women of all people, we have so much that we carry. And it's just the way it is. I was thinking about my mama, during the pandemic, my youngest uncle, who's 5 years younger than she is, he had a triple bypass, and she became the caretaker for him. They found out he was insulin dependent diabetes. My mom's taking care of my grandparents who are almost 90 years old, and she's just carrying the weight, and she runs her own company, and she just turned 60, and I start to see a slight unraveling of her nutrition plan and of her supplementations, because she's literally driving 2 to 3 hours to see and take care of my family members. She's carrying the entire family on her shoulders and running her business and trying to take care of her health. And that she's every woman. She's every woman I talk with. She's every woman I see. Like, how can we get the wins, but then also create the sustainable plan so that we can be who we need to be for our family and our community, and still be who we need to be for ourselves.
It's just, yeah. I mean, that's such a powerful example. I mean, and I think I can kind of foresee that, because I'm at the age where I have young kids and my parents are getting older. I mean, they're like, this might sound silly because I just said they're getting older, but they're clearly not getting younger. And as the years go by, I also hear women say all the time, because you kind of think that when your kids are small, that this is going to be the most that they're going to need you because they're small. So they need you to wipe their bum and they need you to do all these things for them. But that's not what I hear from women with teenagers. I hear that they need you more because then they have other emotional challenges. They need your time. They need you. So it's just, I hear this consistently. So yes, I think there's a lot of women that are nodding their heads. Like, we actually do need solutions because we still have to be here for our families. It's not like we're stressed so we can just go and like take a week off every week. We still have to be able to show up every day. I mean, I could talk to you all day because we barely scratched the surface of your book, but I'm so glad that we had this conversation. And before we wrap up, I mean, for the woman who's listening who really resonated with what we were talking about, is really excited to grab a copy of your book and start diving into these blends that you were talking about. What, if anything, would you want to say to her, or how would you want to kind of close out today?
Absolutely. I think the biggest connection, that biggest conversation I would have is that this is a beautiful transition. Now, I know that sometimes it doesn't always feel that way, but what I've learned in my experience is that, one, you are worthy of owning your health. You are worthy of being healthy. And that you, at the end of the day, no matter what people are telling you, no matter what some doctor told you, that at the end of the day, you are the CEO of your health and you get to redefine what that is. I have seen so many women thinking at a time, in a moment, maybe 48, 50 years old, feeling like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to recover from this? Make some slight shifts and changes and have an insane transformation and really get to paint the next decades of their life exactly how they want to live them. So I just want to open the door for that possibility of, what if it can look so different? What if they were just a couple minor tweaks that you could make that could shift everything: energy, brain capacity, mood, relationships, the career that you love, by simply focusing on you first because you're worthy of that, and then watching that passion unfold. And probably one of the most incredible transformations is really what I see in women in their 40s and their 50s, as they decide to take that ownership and really empower themselves and stop listening to the naysayers and the people, the fear mongers, and just say, you know what, I'm going to define this time on my terms and I'm going to do it my way because that's how I've been doing life up until now. And I see it every day. It's 100% possible. It all just starts with our mindset and knowing that we're worthy and deserving of all of it.
Mic drop. No, that's so powerful and so important, because I really see, just from an outsider's viewpoint, because I'm not yet at that stage, I see it as this incredible time of stepping into your power and really owning it. And that's, I think, the secret of menopause that our world doesn't want us to know, that this incredible transitional time really coincides with this transformation of stepping into our own power and becoming more of who we are. So thank you for making that transition easier for all of the women who grab your book. So let us know, Mariza, where can we go to get your book, to listen to your podcast, Essentially You, to find out more information about you and what you do?
Absolutely. So the book is everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. We're definitely venturing into local bookstores. I love getting books from local bookstores as well. But sometimes it's easier to see it online, but it'll be available everywhere. And then the podcast is Essentially You. It is very, I just love your podcast so much. And I just love that we're just fellow sisters who are sharing this empowering information about women's hormone health. And so that's exactly what my podcast is dedicated to. It focuses a lot on women in their 40s and their 50s as we're transitioning and really finding our way and healing our bodies in a way that feels in alignment with us. And then if you want to check out the website, it's just drmariza.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. This was really great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode over at fertilityfriday.com/363. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Mariza. Always a pleasure to have her on the show and to talk about women's issues in particular this time, talking about menopause, premenopause, perimenopause, that period of time before our last period, and really talking about some of the things that we can do. I love her concept of quick wins. Sometimes we just really need to have some strategies, some go-to strategies for how to manage. And certainly Dr. Mariza's book and her approach is really refreshing, especially in a world where we're given so many negative messages about this period of time, to the point that we can forget that it's a normal stage of life that we are supposed to go through. And it's just a rite of passage. There's lots of different ways we can look at it, but ultimately it is a normal and natural thing for us as women of reproductive age to eventually go through that changing period of time, that transitional time, if you will, where we're no longer able to make babies. And what's great about having these conversations with women who have gone through that phase of time and really looking at it from the woman's perspective instead of our patriarchal kind of male society's perspective, is that we can really look at ways to lessen any potential health impacts that we may experience or that we may be more likely to experience during that time. And we can really decide what this transitional phase means for us. So I hope that the Fertility Friday podcast will remain as one of the places you can go to have positive discussions about this natural transition of life, so that we don't have to approach it with fear and with anxiety, that we can really approach it from a fresh perspective of being a natural process that we go through, when we reach that stage of our reproductive lives. So with that said, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, whenever you're tuning into the show. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.